The show Free Ray Sean has earned 3 Emmy nominations, and each of them for our panelists in the Outstanding Actor and Actress in Short Form Drama or Comedy Series categories, which is incredible. And it is my absolute pleasure to introduce today's panelists: Emmy-winning and Academy Award and Golden Globe-nominated actor Laurence Fishburne, and Emmy and Golden Globe-nominated actress Stephan James, who I mentioned will be joining us shortly, and Emmy-nominated actress Jasmine Cephas Jones, who is here with us right now. Thank you so much for joining us, Laurence and Jasmine. I wanted to start by asking you a little bit about the way that this was approached, because I've noticed that the way that you all discuss it, you describe this as a film rather than a series, and even though that's the way that we as an audience are consuming it, and I was interested in how that played into the way that it was filmed and the way that you looked and read the scripts when you first got them.
Well, this whole new platform, this Quibi platform, when it was first presented to us, it was understood that we were going to be making something that would be delivered in sort of a series kind of format, in a very much kind of like a cliffhanger kind of way. So we all understood that going in, but we also knew that we were going to be shooting it as one sort of larger piece that then would get edited down into the 8, 10, or 12-minute segments. So, you know, it was exciting because it was kind of this new sort of thing that I think a lot of people have sort of been waiting for and anticipating for a long time, like content that was made specifically for, you know, smaller devices. So that part of it was kind of exciting, and also just the story in general was really, really powerful. This is not a new story, but it's certainly been told in a different way.
Right, and sorry, Jasmine.
No, I was just going to say, I think the only thing that really changes the whole entire project is how it's written. So, you know, we shot it like a film, which felt very, very normal, but the only thing that was different and had to really, really change was, I think, the script and how they, you know, ended the episodes, left a cliffhanger, like kind of, you know, Laurence was saying. And I think right from the beginning, it was very collaborative, and, you know, we were all kind of working together on how to make it work with everyone. You know, there was, when we first got into the room, we did a read through, we changed a lot, which was really, really fun. You know, it wasn't just really like going on set and just filming. We were working with the script, changing the script a little bit, and, you know, all working together to make this beautiful, important piece.
Yeah. And Jasmine, one of the things that I wanted to ask you about in terms of when you first read the scripts and your character is the fact that there's so much between the lines with her. There's so many beautiful moments in your performance that you're capturing without the use of dialogue. And so I was interested in the way that you really read between the lines of the script and the way that jumped out at you when you first read them.
I feel like one of the hardest things to do as an actor is act when you're not speaking. And I feel like with Taisha, a lot of the first part of the piece, she has no idea what's going on. And so she's trying to like comfort her child and also find out information while her window is getting blown in or gas is coming in. So there's a lot of this kind of built up tension and frustration that happens when, you know, she can't speak while she's trying to comfort her child as well. And I thought that was really, really important to capture, because that's the kind of superhero mom that she is, you know, trying to make sure everything is okay with her child, with trying to find out everything that's going on and kind of confront her husband, but also knowing everything that, you know, he's going through without knowing. So it's like she's kind of Jill of all trades in, you know, under 24 hours, which is a lot of that is trying to capture that when she doesn't speak and making those decisions on I'm not going to say that now, but I'm feeling a lot. There's so much that I want to say to you, but I can't. Yeah. It's like those moments where she doesn't talk. Yeah. Which was trying to find that. Yeah.
That's amazing. And we're so thrilled to have Stephan joining us as well now. Welcome to the conversation. Thanks for being here. I think your video is just connecting. It's live Zoom connection in the moment.
Just got frozen.
Well, Laurence, I wanted to ask.
Stephan.
I'm sure he'll jump back in a minute. Laurence, I wanted to ask you about the experience of when you first read the script, because you've mentioned how, when you were looking at it, you felt like there were some parallels to one of your very early films, Cornbread Earl and Me, which you made, around 40 years ago, and just what that experience was picking up a script 4 decades later and still seeing the prevalence of those themes and the necessity of that in storytelling.
Yes, it's bittersweet to have to, look at a piece of material that is, dealing with something that's, heartbreaking, really. All of these stories, all of these events, these encounters that end tragically are heartbreaking. And at the same time, there is a necessity to continue to tell these stories in an effort to, create some more dialogue and make some more space for people to have conversations about these issues.
Yeah. And I've noticed a lot of people, after they've watched the show, are actually looking online and asking whether this is based on a real experience. And even though it's not, it's obviously based on the news stories that we're seeing all too frequently. Was it something where any of you looked to any of the particular news stories or cases that have happened recently as you were preparing for your roles? Or was it something where you kind of almost sadly didn't need to because it is on our televisions and in the news every day?
Sadly, I can say, just for myself, as an African American, this is part of the reality of living in this country. These are the things that we have to consider for ourselves, for our children, for our brothers and sisters, our mothers, our daughters. These kind of things happen and happen too frequently. Our dramatizing this kind of incident is, I think, necessary to reflect what's happening, in our society.
Mm-hmm. And Stephan, I wanted to ask you about your initial involvement, and because you first met with Antoine Fuqua, who pitched you the project and described it a little bit as a modern day Dog Day Afternoon. And I was interested in what that really told you about his vision for the show, the tone that he was going for, and the experience that you were going to have in making it. And just before you start talking, I see that you're muted, so it's just on the bottom left-hand side of your screen.
Yeah, I try to mute myself because I have this crazy echo in my office. I didn't want to step on anybody, but it's good to be here. I know there's a lot of people on here. Excuse my lateness to the party. Yeah, just going back to your question, Antoine and I sat down and he had, he told me he wanted to do a modern day take on Dog Day Afternoon. And that's like one of my favorite films of all time, obviously the great Al Pacino. And so I knew he wanted to do something that felt like a ride. It felt like something that was intense, something that was gonna keep you on the edge of your seat. And then, there was this element of like being contained, which was like fascinating to me. Some of my favorite films, are sort of like in contained spaces. And so to me, I think as an actor, I really wanted to welcome the challenge psychologically of being able to live in this space for 6 weeks or however long we were out there. We had a lot of long days, long nights. And for me, I think it played into the psychology of the whole thing. But I was just thrilled to be a part of something that felt so exciting. It felt relevant and important. And so you just feel like as an artist, it's something worth doing.
Yeah. And then for you, Jasmine, in terms of what Stephan was just saying about the space and being in this enclosed environment for several weeks, was there a similarity in the way that you were approaching working within this singular apartment space from the way that you approach theater, where you're really taking that one space and telling a lot of different aspects and different tones of a story?
Well, I think theater is a little bit different because you're in a rehearsal space for at least 4 weeks before. You have, I know for me, I didn't have a lot of time with it where I would have had with a piece of theater. I know the difference also when you are rehearsing and you're like developing your character, you're also performing for a live audience, could be 1,300, and you're trying to get all the way to the back the back of the room. So everything is a little bit bigger, where you don't have to do that when you're on screen. Everything's actually a little smaller, and you can capture those moments, like we said earlier, of like not speaking, all of the little nuances in that. They're very different mediums, but I think trying to analyze a character, I think it's kind of the same process. I feel for me at least. And just really trying to understand where the character is coming from and why. Yeah, I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, no, it absolutely does. And then Laurence, I wanted to ask you a little bit about your preparation for this character, and particularly in reference to his job and his position as a lieutenant, and whether there was any research that you felt you wanted to do for yourself to really understand what his day-to-day was going to look like, what that experience was, how he would interact with his colleagues, how that would shift when the SWAT team comes in, and really just the logistical side of everything that he's doing, as well as his emotional connection to his job.
Yeah, I don't really spend a lot of time doing research for roles in particular. This one, I mean, I was quite prepared. I mean, I'm an honorary citizen of the city of New Orleans. I have a home there. I spend a lot of time there. I've spent time there over the last 25 years. So I'm familiar with the people and the culture and the customs and the language. So I just felt that it was all on the page for me in terms of, the things that I needed to bring as the character. I was really very, very intrigued by when, to add to what these guys were saying about confined space, the fact that Lieutenant Poinsy and Rayshawn never really encounter each other. I mean, our three, excuse me.
Bless you.
We only really encounter each other physically, person to person, one time at the beginning. And then Jasmine and I have an encounter with the little boy later on. But most of our communication is, on the phone. And I was really intrigued and excited by that. There's an old movie that Poitier did years and years ago with Anne Bancroft, where he was like a suicide hotline guy, talking her down from suicide. And that was kind of what was in my mind. I was kind of using that as a template.
Yeah. And did the two of you, Laurence and Stephan, did you have an opportunity to connect and talk about what the dynamic of those phone calls were going to be, since you weren't filming those scenes together as partners, and how you were going to approach and talk to each other, and what that dynamic was going to look like?
Mostly we talked about how the Raptors were going to win the championship. Stephan would not stop talking about how he knew the Raptors were going to win, and I was in total agreement with him.
Totally forgot about that. There was a whole game going on during.
We never talked shop. We did it. Just
Yeah.
No, it was awesome. I gotta say, just such a big fan of Laurence, just his work and obviously the efforts he's put forth on the screen over the years, and to be able to work with him has honestly been a dream come true. He's a consummate pro. And honestly, I just really enjoyed our working dynamic, because, you asked if we talked about, our relationship, and we really didn't, because, I feel like there was so much of it that we were able to work through with C every single day, Jasmine included. Every single day, Steph Mann, our brilliant director, created such a great environment for us, where we were able to talk through every beat in every scene. And, if there was something that felt off to Laurence, something that felt off to Jasmine, we were all able to speak up, freely and sort of adjust things on the fly and as we sort of went. But I really, really appreciated the process with everybody.
There are so many things that are just innate. I mean, it was hot, first of all, where we were working. We were confined. That set that they built of the apartment was really, really tight. The bus that I was on, it was really, really tight. And there were like 19 people in that bus when we were doing all that stuff. The conversations around the scenes and the interaction of stuff were really, particularly the days that Antoine would come on, and he would keep reminding us that we needed to keep our foot on the gas because the stakes were so high. And I think, that was all pretty innate from just the script. I mean, the opening with Ray Sean, fleeing the police and then barricading himself in the apartment, and then, Taisha and the little boy coming in, it all makes for really, really high stakes right from the gate. So I felt like it was pretty innate the temperature that we sort of had to maintain. And then, of course, because it's so hot in New Orleans in May and June, it wasn't that hard. It wasn't that hard to do it.
It was an actual temperature as well.
Oh yeah, the temperature was hot. It was hot.
And because, Stephan, you were just touching upon Stephan and the way that he would approach things and always be open to pivoting, did that create an environment for all of you where there was just an innate feeling of trust and freedom to really push and try several more dynamics and to go places that maybe you wouldn't have necessarily tested out, knowing if this doesn't work, we're free to fail and we're going to switch to something different?
I think so, yeah. I think that's really a sign of a great director is being able to listen to your actors and understand that we're kind of the ones playing it out. And so if something doesn't feel right to us or something doesn't look right to us, regardless of what's on the page, just to be able to have that open ear, I think is very, very important, from the captain of the ship. And so we were lucky enough to have that, I think in Stephan. I think, any little, even the young, actor who played our son, if he had something he wanted to say, the whole set would just be quiet and it was his time to speak. So everyone was heard, everyone was respected. I think we got the opportunity to try things in different ways. Kudos to Steve. He had a vision, but he also allowed us to, play into what we felt was right for our characters, which I appreciate.
I also feel that's so important when you have a project that is such, it's a very important story, but it's also an action film, like an action piece that requires such high stakes in a matter of 24 hours. It's like, what left do we have but jump in the pool and try these drastic and dramatic scenes out, it's almost when things are so high like that, that's what you have left. You can analyze and you can sit down and you can talk for hours all you want, but it's like, you got to get in there and you just got to try it. If it doesn't work, you rewind. But I feel like this type of piece requires that. And, thank God this cast is absolutely amazing, where everybody was absolutely capable of doing that.
Yeah. And then Laurence, one of the things I wanted to ask you about in terms of your character is it's so fascinating watching his decision-making process. He's incredibly methodical. He's incredibly measured, even when he has to step into the position of being the mediator and that's not necessarily his role within the department. The way that he approaches it is so fascinating. And I was just really interested in the way that you mapped out that approach for him and decided how he was going to approach each of those very extreme situations that he's being placed in over these few days.
Well, for me, it was, again, it was really down to what was on the page, because it's very clear that Pointy is in a position to, on one hand, he's got to make a decision. And the decision is he going to protect this young man, or is he going to protect his brother officers almost. He almost has to make a decision about, which comes first, the apprehension of the so-called criminal or protecting the life of a young Black man and his family. And that's a very, very difficult place to be in. And I think the character's history, he supposedly shot a young person, a little boy or something, early in his career. I think the choice is really clear that his decision is to do everything within his power to help secure and safeguard the life of Rayshawn and his family.
Yeah. And Stephan, I wanted to ask you a little bit about your character's history as an Iraq war veteran and how you took that detail off the page and really played it into some of the details and the way that he approaches the situation that he's in with the training that he would have gone through and the experience of going to war. He kind of almost knows a little bit of what to actually anticipate and to expect from the situation.
Yeah. I think that's actually a part of this thing that I think that we might almost overlook. This is a man who gave his life for his country, served for, many years, became a Marine. And, I think that it's telling. I mean, just to speak to your question, I think I definitely used the physicality and the stealth and, what any young man, much less a young soldier, would tap into at this point in time. And so that played into, sort of the way I was moving around the apartment, how I would look out the windows, how I would bend down, how I would, how defensive I was with my family and their movements and their placement within the house. But I think that, ultimately, all those things being said, that this is a young man who was a father, was a husband, and was a Marine, served for his country. And I think that there's something to be said for that, to be a fly on the wall, to know that these cases, any one of these cases that you want to look at, we had ample source material for this subject matter, whether you look at a Mike Brown, more recently, George Floyd, Philando Castile, any one of those names, Paul McDonald, any one of those names, and then you really have to take a second and realize that, these are people, they're human beings. They have lives, that really matter. They have families that really love them. And I think that's what I was most proud of, to be a fly on the wall in that apartment, to see the relationship between Rayshawn and his wife, Rayshawn and his son, that family dynamic. I think that was so important for us to be able to capture and ultimately portray for this.
Yeah. And Jasmine, you touched a little bit earlier on working with Danny Boyd Jr., who plays your son in the show. And you just do such an incredible job at giving such an incredibly powerful performance, but also really creating a space for him to be able to do so as well. And I was interested in the way that the two of you worked together and what that dynamic is, because in those scenes together, you're not just focusing on yourself, you're really shepherding him through it as well.
Well, when someone is so young like that, also, working, doing like such an amazing job, you just want to make him feel comfortable, around you. And we would have these really, really intense moments. And then we'd get a plane and we'd act like we were planes, and Stephan would like pick him up and throw him in the air. And I think, that is so important, and creating this really comfortable relationship with him, and then kind of going into the trenches. But I mean, he was absolutely amazing. And he was such a kid, and he was so bright and smart, and he made us all laugh. And, when the camera started rolling, it was almost inevitable. Like, he was just acting right beside me. I didn't have to do much. He completely owned it, with all the work that he did. He was absolutely incredible to work with. And it really was a joy to share the screen with him. But he completely held his own. He really did.
So amazing in it. I wanted to jump into one of the questions that we got in the Q&A chat box from our audience. And Sarah's asking for each of you, what was the hardest scene that you had to shoot personally?
Wow. There were a couple of them for me. There was a couple of scenes with my son, the actor that plays my son. At the end, I think that was the one for me. At the end, where I had the confrontation with Skeet Ulrich's character, and I punch him in the face. Mm-hmm. I think for me that was the most difficult because it was all over, and it's kind of, and it's deeply sad. I mean, it's just really, really tragic. I think that scene was, for me personally, was probably the most difficult to play.
I think one of the hardest scenes for me was at the end where I find out that basically Rayshawn gets shot and I hear the gunshot and just literally completely become this emotional screaming like my head off and just kind of giving over to that. That was another kind of example of just free falling into something like that. I kind of took a moment. I like locked myself in a dark room for a while, like a half an hour, and then I kind of came out and didn't really talk that much and just kind of went for it. I think kind of in those types of scenes, like you just want to be truthful and you want to be real. And, you know, when it's written and then she falls over and falls to the floor and cries, you know, it's just like you want to give it everything that you have. And I did like a lot of takes of that. And I think by the end of that, I don't know, I went home and went to bed because it took so much out of me.
I just want to say about that, that work that you did in that scene, Jasmine, was extraordinary. It was so powerful. I took it upon myself to try and be as protective of you during those moments because, you know, in between setups, there was a lot of chatter and there was a lot of talk, and I could see the emotional place that you had put yourself in. And I was really trying to make sure that they could keep things going, keep shooting so that you could really deliver the performance. And you did. I mean, you were just incredible. The places that you went to and the way in which you played those scenes. And I was really, really proud to be working with you in those moments because your work is absolutely extraordinary, particularly in that moment.
Thank you so much. It's like coming from the GOAT, the greatest of all time.
Bless you. Thank you
so much. And I saw that, and I appreciate that so much. I saw you protecting me, and
you were just killing it.
That's the magic that happens between actors. I feel like it's just such a beautiful thing when you don't even have to say anything, and you know they're just on the level. And Stephan too, like there were so many moments as well. Like you just have to have each other when you're going through such an emotional, high stake project like this. So
yeah.
Thank
How
you.
about for you, Stephan?
Yeah, I mean, I second all that. You guys are just, I love to watch you guys act. I was grateful to be in this with you guys. You know, I think that you guys helped elevate me, so thank you for that. I don't know if there was anything that was easy about this film. You know,
like the whole entire thing for you.
Yeah. Yeah. There you go.
But yeah, it definitely, you know, this is one that takes a lot out of you. I think that if you're not, you know, shedding a piece of yourself in this process, then you're not really doing the work justice. And I think we all shed a piece of ourselves on this. If I had to just recall one thing that stands out, it'd probably be, you know, the end scene where, you know, Rayshawn has to make a decision to give up his family, essentially.
Yeah.
And I think that that's probably, you know, that scene is just like the amalgamation of this whole journey, this this whole, I don't know, 6 hours or whatever you want to call it, that we're stuck in this house. And, you know, it comes to the point where Rayshawn has to give up his family, you know, for their betterment. But, you know, I think that in the same breath, he also knows that he's probably not going to make it out of this. And so there's a lot that he has to sit with in that moment in time. You know, realizing that he has to protect his wife and his son, and then realizing what that's going to mean for his ultimate fate. And so that was a tough moment for me.
Yeah, and I think that leads into this one question that we have from Janae, which is, what conversation do you think and hope that Free Rayshawn will start or contribute to?
My hope is that it will continue the conversation that, you know, we've been having for a long time in this country, and that now has reached a kind of pitch and a crescendo that we haven't seen before, with the death of, you know, people like George Floyd and Breonna Taylor. I think, you know, that films like this, stories like this, do contribute and do help facilitate conversations around an issue that, you know, make it a little less uncomfortable. Although it's an uncomfortable conversation to have, it makes it a little less uncomfortable. It frames it in such a way that it allows us to have conversation, is my hope.
Yeah. I just hope it gives an eye into how it affects these people emotionally and how it affects their families. You know, it brings the reality and real emotion to these people that's not just on, you know, on the news. And, you know, sometimes they talk about them like they're not even human beings. And when you watch a piece like this, it brings the life and the humanity into these people. And I hope it just, as Lauren says, keeps the conversation going. And, you know, for people that don't realize that these are human beings and they're real people, and they've got real emotions, and it tears these people apart. It tears communities apart.
Yeah, I would just agree. I mean, you know, the hope is that it continues the conversation. The hope is that it challenges, you know, your perspective or your prejudices. You know, the hope is that you can see an element of yourself in which everyone should be able to, because this is a human story at the end of the day. And you know, Antoine said something really smart the other day. You know, you don't really want to tell people what to take from it. You know, you just kind of want people to watch it and feel it. And if you have a heart, you kind of feel something. So.
Yeah. Well, in the hopes that this really does continue a lot of these conversations, you know, for everybody watching, please make sure to share and tell your friends, tell your family to watch this on Quibi, Free Rayshawn. And thank you so much to all of you joining us, and congratulations on the Emmy nominations. I think it's not just a testament to your incredible performances, but to the voice that this show has and the incredible work throughout the entire team. So congratulations. And thank you so much for taking time to talk about it today.
Thank you, Mara.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you.